finance and revenue with myself, Nick Allen, Bernie Flynn, and Brian McGinnis. We are running about 12 minutes behind, so we're going to call it to order at 6:13 now. Number 2 is comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. Alrighty. Seeing none, we can roll into our discussion items, where item A is the February 2022 financials.
Good evening. If we start on page 2, please. So looking at the budget to actual summary by department and by fund for the year ended February 28th, we had actual revenues of $5,591,431. This was offset by actual expense of $3,378,637, which resulted in a positive net income for the year ended of $2,212,794. I just want to note that these financials are prepared on the cash basis of accounting, so you won't see any accruals in any of these line items. Going over to page 3, looking at the cash balances for all the accounts in the borough's name. The beginning balance for February 1st was $13,224,036. We brought in or transferred among the funds $4,455,022. We expended or transferred out $3,222,832, and this resulted in an ending cash balance for February of $14,456,226. Again, it is important to note that of this $14 million, we do have restricted cash of about $9.1 million. That's restricted for special purposes, and operating cash result is about $5,294,000. I'm going over to page 4. Pages 4, 5, 6 is a summary of all the due to and due from activity. As we had discussed last month, we've got some pretty large balances on the books. It's mainly items that are due among the funds, the biggest being the due tos in the general fund to the sewer and the parking. So if we go over to page 7, you'll see that we began the month with a balance of about $11.6 million in due tos and due froms. We transferred activity among the funds as we could. That resulted in $326,759 being transferred among the funds, and we ended the month with a due to from balance of about $11.2 million. Going over to page 8, this is the transfer summary. This is all the transfers that were budgeted, as well as the money that was transferred from the capital operating reserve fund. You will see that only $1 million has been transferred from the capital operating to the general. No additional monies have been drawn down on that. Going over to page 9, this is just a summary of where we stand year to date. Looking at the revenues, EIT is coming in very strong. We did receive some pretty big remittances in the month of February. And again, that has to do with the payroll tax returns being due by employers by January 31st. We also are trending quite well with parking tickets. This is tracking close to budget, which is always good. Parking garage income, you will see that 0 has been recorded in this line item. The check that we receive in January, we accrue back to 2021, and we did not actually receive our February check until March. And since we do record these books on a cash basis, you'll see a double entry in March. District court fines are also tracking close to budget. And then looking down at the expenditures, these are just some items that, are trending a little bit higher than what the monthly averages would be. So just something to kind of put out there and make sure that we're kind of, taking a look and keeping close tracks on these things. So overtime within the police department is tracking very well. That's not over budget at this time, but the wastewater department is trending a little high. Our capital expenses, we have a discussion point on this, but I just wanted to point out that while this is not over budget, it appears as though it is. There's some items from 2021 that were not completed, and this is what's pushing this number a little bit high right now. And then looking at the fuel expense, I just wanted to make a note that this is trending very high. Just wanted to make a point that it's tracking over budget at this point in time. And then the snow removal in the liquid fuels fund is over budget at this point in time by 8%. Are there any questions?
Questions? I had one. This is my third year on this committee, and I'm finally starting to get the rhythm of the dance every year. Mainly that, the first couple of months are kind of tight, and then, March is fun. And my question with the due to and due from that we're tracking this year, it sounds like things are steady so far this year, which is good news. Is that the kind of, do we have any idea if this was, do we need to watch out for this in the middle of the year, or did it happen bit by bit throughout the year?
I think what's important to note is that these balances, we keep them, that they remain the same as they were at year end 2021, and that they do not increase, and that each month we make sure that we are transferring any monies that one fund would owe to the other so that those balances do not increase.
So it was just like a gradual month by month thing that we're monitoring every single month now.
Correct, yes.
And then, okay, I got you. So I just wanted to make sure, because I know there are some things that I feel like I like to keep an eye on each month, but then it's like a really big action in November or December. And if that makes sense. So I'm I just wanted to make sure that it was a month by month thing, that it makes sense to think about it that way.
That's the goal for this year, to make sure that those balances, they stay the same at what we ended in 2021, and they do not increase, and that the activity gets, reconciled each month and the money gets transferred either way.
Perfect. Thanks so much. All righty. Thanks very much. I think we are all set to move on. Capital expense reconciliation.
That would be under the capital. Okay, thank you. So looking at page 1, I put together this capital projects reconciliation to show all the projects that were approved in the 2021 budget, what was approved, what was completed, and what is still in process. So looking at that middle table there, it's kind of on the bottom. In 2021, we had 40 capital projects that were approved in the budget. Of those 40 projects, 17 were completed, 2 were deferred, and 21 were in process. The in process is what I want to focus on tonight. When we were preparing the 2022 budget, we knew that about half of those projects would not be completed. So we accounted for those projects under the reserve cash. Some examples, the tertiary, I know I don't say that word right, of about 1.5 million in the wastewater fund. We accounted for that in the 22 budget under the reserve for cash, as well as the Marshall Square Park Playground project. That was about $45,000 that we accounted for under the reserve for cash. The other half of these projects we thought would be completed at year end, but they weren't. So what we are looking to do is, if you look at this table above, you will see across the funds, all 5 of the major funds, we have a positive cash balance of almost $2.9 million, which is more than enough to fund these 2021 projects that were not completed. If you see the middle column, that total is about $1.2 million. So there's more than enough money to cover the funds. We're not asking for, any further allocations. I just wanted to bring this to your attention that when you see future reporting that occurs, it may appear as though these capital line items are over budget, but they're not. We have the money to pay for them. Looking at the fire fund, you will see at 12/31, we did end the year with about $279,000 in cash. We do have vehicles they have been ordered. We have not received them. We have not paid for them. But I prepared this report as of 12/31. If we were to pay for those vehicles on 1/1, we would not have had enough cash, but money has since come into the fund. If you look at the Treasury report, the reports that I just went over, we have about $345,000 in that fund. We have been receiving cash from the various surrounding townships that we have a fire fund protection contract with. So this is more for informational purposes. I just wanted to show, kind of give you a summary of what was out there and what is still open. There's no ask, it's just more for your information. And at next month's committee meeting, I will be providing a full reconciliation of everything that is open and still in process.
Okay. Great. Any questions?
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I'm sure. It looks like it.
I mean, if you scroll to there's other pages included, if you want me to go over any of the projects, but some of the major things are the High Street corridor. The fire squad went over that. We have the sewer relining project that has been an ongoing project. We also have repairs at the Bicentennial Garage. We have the meter upgrades. We've got a few storm protection projects. And last but not least, please don't forget about the American Rescue Plan funds. While these funds were, much needed funds that we received last year, there were some allocations that were approved. But again, the projects are out there, but we haven't received any bills. We haven't received the products as of yet. So that's on the last page. Then that totals about $270,000.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? Public comment? Yeah, go ahead.
So one thing we're learning looking at this, and we need to evaluate as an organization, is if we're putting forward a capital program that has 40 projects and we can get 21 of them done in a 12-month period, should we be doing something different with our capital programming capabilities on the inside, or should we be putting less on our plate? So those are questions I'm thinking through with the help of the staff. We've made a couple adjustments in staffing that I talked about at last night's meeting but I think it's going to pay dividends over this year and next year. In other words, having somebody run point on capital project management in the borough, and that person's Will Williams. Not being the one person who's going to be in charge of all capital programming planning, but somebody who makes sure that we stay on time and on schedule. And as we go through this year's capital program, I hope to learn more about what our bandwidth is to get capital programs and projects done, so that we're putting the right number and kinds of projects on our plate, that we get those done in a 12-month period as best we can, or plan for them to occur over a 24-month period if we need be.
Great. Yeah, I think that makes a whole world of sense. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks again. And I think we're good now then to move on to item 3C, which is Responsible Contractors Ordinance.
Do you want to speak about this? So this is a proposed ordinance that Mr. McGinnis asked to be put on the agenda for this evening. It relates to the contracts that the borough enters into, and making sure that the qualified bidders, attain to certain, standards that are in this ordinance, for responsible bidding and to make sure that we're getting, the correct prices and that, the staffing that they have, that they, qualify for certain items in this, ordinance, if I got the summary of that correct.
Yes, it is. I mean, essentially, what it does is it actually defines the term responsible. Instead, we normally go by the lowest bid, but this does define that term, and this ordinance spells that out throughout the document here.
Are there any questions?
Thank you very much. If you take the time to read the actual document through, you'll find that most of it's pretty good, except for number 11, under the qualifications. And it clearly states the apprenticeship program for each trade, classification, employment craft, approved by the Department of Labor. And then an additional document, the apprentice trade, as most people do know, is strongly linked to union labor. And the criteria for Class A apprenticeship programs match those apprenticeship programs sponsored by the Union Labor Organization. And it prohibits any basically non-union contractor from doing business in the borough unless they have an apprentice program. The entire ordinance is good for me, except for number 11, because I clearly think it blocks any Commonwealth approved and licensed contractor from doing large projects for the borough. And it's only talking, and for me, it's only points for the use of only union labor or those who have an apprentice program. And we know that most non-union contractors do not have an apprentice program. They hire journeymen and tradesmen and laborers to do their projects. So the number 11 under the document, I can't support that.
Yes, I just want to comment on that. I have a document here that basically states over 500 apprenticeship programs in the state of Pennsylvania, and only 50 of them are union. So I will send this to you as well. I have this as an email, and it's from the Department of Labor as of 2018. Also, if you hit Control F, there's only 2 times where the word union is only mentioned. One is a court case, and then there's another time where it's mentioned in this specific ordinance. So it's not a pro-union ordinance. It's basically an ordinance that, again, defines the term responsible, and it essentially, if we're going to use public funds to build, that we have good actors in place, whether they be union or non-union.
As I said, if you remove number 11, because on the apprenticeship program, those who do know construction know that the unions do an excellent job with their apprentice program, but I would match my Williamson Trade School certificate and degree up against any union person. The fact of the matter is, it's doing undue burden on Commonwealth approved and licensed contractors in the borough. And most of the non-union people don't have an apprentice program. So you're strongly defining who can bid our work if they have an apprentice program. So I'll be happy to look at your documents you send, but the apprentice program is the stumbling block because it blocks all the non-union qualified bidders in the Commonwealth.
And maybe a good clarifying question then. I personally, I don't have a problem with how this is written as is. But, to Bernie's point, how difficult would it be for one of these organizations to start an apprenticeship program? Is that, you would know more than I would, is that,
I mean, a lot of these organizations do have apprentice. As I mentioned, I have a document here that roughly 500 organizations within the state of Pennsylvania do have apprenticeship programs, either from 3 to 5 years. So it does not prohibit any of those organizations from bidding at all. Now, the fact that Councilman Flynn did mention unions and apprenticeship programs, this also leads to, if it is union work, more likely than not, you have an increased minority, veteran, and woman representation on job sites as compared to non-union organizations. And I think if we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, that this ordinance would help advance that within the construction industry. Again, this is not pro-union. It's not anti-union. It's ensuring that good actors bid on, have the responsible lowest bid on these public works projects.
are there any public comments, public questions? Okay, great. So the ask then would be to recommend this next week for a full council discussion? Or is this strictly just discussion for this month?
Well, I would recommend that I know that our current solicitor is working through this ordinance in another township, so she has great familiarity with it. But what I really wanted to find out was whether council wanted to, have the solicitor review it, give us a little bit of time on the staff side to read through it and see if there are things that pop out for us before we, forward it for a vote and adoption. I think it needs, in my opinion, it just needs some vetting on the inside and through the solicitor. And I was hoping, I wasn't going to suggest we not do that if the idea didn't have the support of council, because why invest that time if you don't have support of the full membership?
To another point, after I review the contractors that Mr. McGinnis says that are non-union that have apprenticeship programs, I may change my mind. But currently, apprenticeship programs are strictly union-based programs. I've been in the construction field long enough to understand what is union and what is non-union. Now, the fact of the matter is, the union apprentice program is excellent. The tradesmen that come out of there are phenomenal, but also, that's not my main point is, I think we're limiting the pool of qualified candidates because most of non-union, if not all, except for the list I get from Mr. McGinnis, don't have an apprenticeship program.
I will gladly provide that list to both you and Councilman Allen to review. And then I hope that we could review this, give council a month to look at this. And I think it would be for a good debate.
Cool, sounds good. And just, just for the staff side of things, at least on this committee, we're looking right now 2-to-1 pending what we think about this coming month. But yeah, this is something that I definitely would be interested in taking a look at. Especially, it's great having a solicitor who's already going through the motions here. I think that only helps our case here.
It'll keep our pricing down because West Goshen's paying for it.
And just to let you know, the county has passed this ordinance, Bucks County, Montgomery County, Delaware County, of course, Philadelphia as well.
Awesome. And
also many other municipalities in Southeast Pennsylvania.
yeah, and Councilman McGinnis, I do genuinely very much appreciate your legwork on this as well. So thank you. I appreciate it. Any other comments? So we'll talk about this again next month is the idea. Awesome. Cool. And looks like we're good then to move on to item 3D, which is RFPs for solicitor, auditor, and engineers.
So this was also another item that Mr. McGinnis wanted on the agenda. To the best of my knowledge, the last time the RFP went out for the auditor was back in 2015. So we have had our current auditor for a few years now. As for the solicitor and engineer, I believe that's been quite a few years as well. So
Do you have a time, an estimated year when that was bid out?
for the solicitor or for both?
For both.
I'm going to venture to guess that it's probably been, over at least 5 to 10 years.
The engineer was done about 4 years ago, about 4 years ago, Mr. Perone took over. Pannoni was the qualified bidder at that given time. The auditor, as you mentioned, Mealy's been around for quite a while, and the solicitor is well-versed in what's going on in the borough. I don't know. Matter of fact, I think we did that a few years ago as well, because they came in at a certain price that no one could believe they came in at. I think that was in the last Perone's time.
Great. I mean, I think it's a responsible thing to do, right? So,
And as far as bids, yes, for, I think, all of those, professional organizations that, the solicitor, auditor, and engineers, it forces them to sharpen our books and hopefully future tax savings that could prevent future tax increases. So would like to help, hopefully we can move forward on that.
My question to that was, we don't know what's in the contracts. We don't, Finance Committee. And we should, or someone should review the contracts to make sure that they're up to date because of COVID and everything else that's been going on. And things have changed over the last 2.5 years. And we're not sure. I'm not sure what's in the contracts, what they're supposed to supply to us.
If I may make one point about the auditor, we do have an engagement letter to audit the year ended 2021. We do have that budgeted for $40,000. So, and that's scheduled to take place next month. So.
and then just in terms of staff side, turnaround time, is that something that you'd be comfortable having us talk about next week as full council?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. Yeah.
Great. So, I mean, I'd say we could call this a 3-0 recommendation then to talk
Right.
about next week. Yeah, I think it's good timing, especially, fingers crossed coming out of COVID. I think it makes a lot of sense. I should ask if there's any public comment on this before marching on here. I know we have another committee meeting rolling in here, so we'll hustle along for you. We're good to move on now to our action items, and we'll move on to 4A, which is just to appoint the following delegates to the Chester County Tax Collection Committee. Number 1 being primary being Sean Metrick, first alternate Barbara Leonti, and second alternate is myself, Nick Allen. Any questions? It's pretty straightforward. Public comment? Okay, great. Yeah, we can call that one a 3-0 recommendation, and then we can talk minutes. Be okay with the minutes? All right, excellent. We'll call that 3-0 as well. Item number 5 is other business. All right. Now we're only 11 minutes behind. We'll adjourn at 6:41. Thank you.